Good evening. My name is Jesse Grushak, and I'm one of the co-founders of Ethereal, and welcome to the third installment of Ethereal Sessions. 2 weeks ago, we covered yield farming and bootstrapping liquidity, and if you missed that session, you can check out the recording on our website, etherealsummit.com. Don't forget to jump on our Discord. The link is also on our website, where you can potentially claim your free proof of attendance protocol NFT. We might be having some centralized platform issues, so jump in there and check. If you have any questions, you can ask us on Discord or tweet at us with the hashtag Ethereal Sessions. A special thank you to Immutable, the team behind Gods Unchained, who have sponsored tonight's event. Head over to playgu.co/ethereal to learn more. And as always, a shout out to Super Rare for providing the stunning visuals. This week's piece is by TD Hooper and is for sale at superrare.co. The proceeds of the sale will be split between Black Girls Code and Coders of Color. Today's topic is a departure from financials as we go deep into the world of non-fungible tokens as they apply to video games. Now, video games have had alternative currencies, rare objects, and loot boxes for years, so where exactly does blockchain fit in? How can blockchains create new synergies between game developers and allow us to take our fantasy worlds from game to game? As we answer these questions and more, join us as we jump into the world of gaming on the decentralized web, where we'll be joined by Alex Connolly, the CTO of Immutable, Kris Vaivods, the CEO of VZ Games, Marguerite deCourcelle, the CEO of Blockade Games.
Okay. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. Jesse, are we good to go from the intros? Okay. I'm Marguerite deCourcelle and CEO of Blockade Games. We're developing Neon District, it's a cyberpunk RPG, and I'm here joined with some special guests. I'd like to introduce Kris, and Alex. If you guys would give a quick intro of yourselves and a brief overview of your company, maybe what you're developing. Starting with Kris Gonsalves.
Sure. So I'm Kris Gonsalves. I'm the CEO of Community Gaming and the Battledow tournament platform. And Community Gaming is an esports events company. We run online and in-person events for all the top global esports, so games like League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike, CSGO. And more recently, we launched version 1 of our blockchain-enabled tournament platform called Battledow, and we've been running tournaments for games like Axie Infinity and Skywaver. And we're making it super simple for gamers to play in online tournaments and open up their first wallet, play in tournaments with automated match reporting, and to get paid out instantly via smart contracts on our platform. And yeah, we were running over 100 events the past couple of years in person, and now we've doubled down on our online presence, and we're running live stream tournaments every week.
Thank you. Kris?
Yeah, hey everyone, it's Kris with a K. So I'm writing, I'm here from VZ Games, Riga, Latvia. VZ Games is a blockchain gaming studio that was founded by 2 childhood friends, me and Nathan. And we currently are working on our first title called HashRush. HashRush is a real-time strategy game. And we are implementing blockchain in a way that we have broken out our premium currency, and we want to see players trading with each other, both the tokenized premium currency as well as cards, NFTs in the game. And so we want to introduce them to the play turn experience. So right now we are we just launched our beta a week ago. We have hit 1,000+ players in the first week, and we're about to launch the P2P trading as well as implementing our tokenized premium currency rush in the game as well. So it's great to be here, and I'm really excited to talk about NFTs and how they can players turn.
Thank you. Thank you. Alex from Immutable.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex, the CTO of Immutable, which is a blockchain games company headquartered in Sydney, in Australia. We make Gods Unchained, which is an Ethereum-based TCG, which basically means that all the assets inside our card game, all the individual cards are individual NFT tokens tracked on Ethereum. Right? In addition to Gods Unchained, we're making the Immutable platform, which is basically a way to take all the learnings and experience we've had over the last 2 years, basically building Gods Unchained, all of the sort of the UX friction that comes to building a blockchain game, and try to make that a little bit easier for other blockchain developers and eventually sort of traditional game developers as well. Right? Gods Unchained is one of the more popular Ethereum games. We're about to launch our first card expansion and a bunch of other fun features. So a lot more to come from us soon.
Awesome, thank you very much. Before we jump into non-fungible tokens and what's happening in the game developer space right now, just if you could tell me a little bit, maybe in 2 sentences about, or 3, what you were doing before you, I guess, got into the blockchain space in general. Kris?
So I've been working at Consensus for the past 2.5 years as an analyst on the labs team, so helping with a lot of the gaming investments we've been doing, consulting with game developers, educating them on the use cases and benefits of NFTs and blockchain tech, and also been growing the esports scene in New York City, where I'm based. So we've been running gaming events since 2017 every month. And
we have been around, started the gaming studio back in 2017. And before that, I was into Ethereum mining and Bitcoin mining. And that's when I really got into the decentralized smart contracts, networks, stuff like that. And and I was studying computer science, and I had this idea that through smart contracts and the power of blockchain technology, we could allow players to extract value from the game by tokenizing assets. And in 2017, we started VZ Games, and we set out the goal to make the dream of play to earn reality. And we've been working on the project HashRush for the past 3 years. And yeah, so we're here now.
Thank you. Alex?
Awesome. I come from a sort of a double background in both software engineering and law. Right? And actually, sort of prior to getting involved at Immutable, I was actually using the other half. Right? So I was using the legal half, and I got into the blockchain that way. So first focusing on decentralized voting systems, and then in sort of the ICO boom at the end of 2017, did a lot of sort of legal work in relation to that, and that sort of nicely transitioned over into what we do now.
Great, thank you. I guess a great way to kick off the topic of NFTs, Kris, Gonsalves, if you could, at least for anyone that's watching that maybe doesn't know what an NFT is, could you give us a really high-level overview of what is a non-fungible token? And then second, with your expansive background at Consensus, and you led the blockchain gaming initiative over there for quite a while. From your research, what was the most creative use case that you saw with a team implementing non-fungible tokens?
Sure. So what is an NFT? What is a non-fungible token? It's a way to independently track, in this case, game assets. So whether it's a skin or a rare item in a game, it's essentially like a serial number that's tracked on the blockchain. So you can track ownership. And in the case of what is the most, you said what is the most interesting use case?
I was saying creative.
Creative? Well, I think we're really, in the early innings of how creative it can get, but enhanced ownership of game assets is, if you look at games like Gods Unchained and Skyweaver, being able to own your own items, to be able to monetize them. And when it comes to influencers, whether they're streamers or just, famous gamers, to be able to have like memorabilia items. So digital memorabilia, I think, is a really early stage creative concept, right? You have sports stars like LeBron James, and if you have his jersey, that's a really valuable piece of memorabilia, right? It's more valuable than just a jersey off the rack. And in the same manner, if you have, and I'll use Ninja because everyone knows who Ninja is, if you have Ninja's, Gods Unchained mythic card, or if you have Pokemane's Gods Unchained mythic card, or just a rare card in general, it's extremely rare, right? And you can independently verify the authenticity of that item, right? It's really theirs. And even if there's other like items like it, effectively the serial number, the hash behind it is uniquely identifiable, right? So it's this concept of true digital scarcity coming to game economies and allowing game developers to embrace this idea of extensibility and allowing everyone to monetize and own their items independent of the game, which is in this a lot of walled gardens.
To add on to that, I think we should clearly define that you can have an in-game currency that is a fungible token, right, and be considered a blockchain game, but that doesn't mean that you're using non-fungible tokens. The distinction there is approached differently by different developers. So on that note, I'd like to talk a little bit, maybe, I guess, to Kris. How are you guys approaching non-fungible tokens in your game?
So I think basically our main core item of the player-driven economy is our fungible token Rush coin, so an RC20 token. But we still believe that by allowing players to freely trade with in-game items, so not only the premium currency, but for example, skins, we can create that play turn mechanic that we're looking for. So what we're doing, we're looking into allowing to tokenize really rare items like skins that would customize your world. For now, that is what we're looking into. But these are only rare items that we tokenize, and we think player would go the extra step to take out from the game right now.
Are your assets customizable, or does the developer control the content?
They're our assets, so we create the content for now. We don't have a system in place that would allow players to customize, but we're looking into creating a community-driven event that would allow create skins for the units themselves, and then split through blockchain technology, fairly split the profits from selling these customizable items.
Okay, thank you. Alex, if you could tell me a little bit about how you're implementing NFTs into your ecosystem.
Fantastic, sure. So every card in Gods Unchained is its own NFT, right? So we also use fungible tokens in some other respects. So we have things which we call sort of chests of card packs, which are basically sort of like big tradable boxes of cards, and every one of those is the same. But once you open those up, the cards that you get are all non-fungible tokens, right? Most of those non-fungible tokens, though, at least at the moment, are relatively similar, right? So we have a couple of properties per card, and there'll be a lot of cards with those properties, right? I think, as Kris alluded to earlier, some of the cards in Gods Unchained, so like Gods Unchained Mythics, are entirely one of a kind in terms of there's only one card which does that thing, right? But we have also lots of cards where there might be sort of 30,000 of a particular card, which they all have the same effect and they all look the same, right? Gods Unchained still treats those cards as NFTs, right? That's something which is not enormously useful to our players right now, but as we go forward, we're looking for players to be able to build on both a history of the trading history of that asset, the history of the usage of that asset, maybe levels on those assets. If it's been signed by someone, we want to give players a lot of creative space with which to actually sort of choose the level of non-fungibility at which they sort of they can attach properties to their tokens, right? And so even though at the moment non-fungibility isn't enormously useful to players in Gods Unchained, right? We're sort of building the foundation of a game where each asset actually will be really meaningfully distinct from each other.
All of that information that you're assigning to the token, it can get relatively expensive, especially if you're doing a transaction on chain.
Yep.
How have you thought about that? And I guess what in your gameplay is on chain and not on chain in order to have those sort of capabilities?
Yeah, so we are very conscious of general sort of Ethereum resource consumption, right? And one of the things that we certainly learned with Gods Unchained is that none of the gameplay logic of Gods Unchained happens on chain, right? That's not something that we're sort of averse to doing long term, but at least at the moment, the logic behind actual interactions in the game are simply far too complicated for us to encode it in Gods Unchained on Ethereum, right? So even if we were to use state channels, something similar, the logic is too complex, right? So what we try to do is we try to give players what we think they really care about at the moment, which is true ownership over particular assets and then storing the properties of those assets which are really important to users on chain, right? So in Gods Unchained, we store that, what type it is, and then sort of the quality of the card, right? As well as sort of like a general sort of metadata map on chain, which means that other contracts can interface with those properties. People can build sort of tokens which wrap different types of cards based on subsets of those properties. And so we sort of have found a good balance between what users really care about having trustless over, which is those sort of on-chain properties, and what they are currently not expressing a super strong preference for, which is all the gameplay logic being on-chain.
Awesome. And while I have you, I want to talk a little bit about your design of your sale that you had, and then when players are finally allowed to trade them. I'm really curious about you guys. You create a lot of content. So what was that cycle like? Historically, it's, I guess people talk about it as being one of the most successful events from blockchain gaming. So if you could tell us that story, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think with Gods Unchained, basically, I'll sort of tell the overall story, which was that we sort of launched a pre-sale in about July 2018, right? We sold out that pre-sale and made, I think, the end of September 2019, and cards were tradable in October 2019, right? And so this was for a number of reasons. So this delay in tradability was primarily due to sort of card balance, right? So that like we were in the process of designing a card game from the ground up. Once we tell you this is what your card's going to do, and you make trading decisions based on that information, if we later change what the card does, you might be like, actually, I would have preferred to keep that card, and various things like that, right? So like very much there was sort of a bootstrapping process to tradability, right? Gods Unchained, sort of the Genesis season, right, sold just shy of 7 million cards, right? And this was a bit of a problem for the blockchain, right? So I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about scaling for a second, then I might be able to come back to it later, which is to say, we had 7 million cards to create, and the cost of actually doing those with most standard NFT implementations is millions of dollars, right? Particularly if you're hoping to do it in a short period of time, right? So what we sold users initially was actually still trustless, right? So we sold them basically like a seed from which NFTs cards could be generated whenever a user wanted, right? And so all of that logic was encoded in the smart contract, so you could actually create the NFTs whenever the players chose to, right? But it didn't create them at the time of purchase for expense reasons, right? At the end of Genesis, we decided to basically, we'd created a new way of implementing the NFT standard, right? So ERC 721 is basically the Ethereum interface for defining what an NFT is, right? Implementing things in the standard way would have cost players a very large amount of money and would have probably have resulted in not very many cards being tradable, right? So what we did at Immutable was we basically came up with a new implementation, which was really quite specialized for our needs, right? Like sort of the batch minting of cards to particular users. Right, we printed all of those cards and we made them tradable in about October last year, right? Would you like me to get into some of the market dynamics that we saw after that? I'm conscious of taking too much time.
Yeah, well, I guess, sure, I think so. And then we can talk about the sustainability after. Yeah.
Awesome.
So there was a lot of hype. It was very exciting when that finally users could trade, and I was really excited myself to see what would happen because it had been such a long window, and the sales that you had seen were very successful. So how did that play out?
Yeah, so I think it's been a success overall. It's certainly something we would say. Like one of the big things we were very keen to avoid is obviously players had sort of not been able to trade for a very long period of time actually, right? And that meant that some players just wanted to sell out, or some players wanted to sort of look for other opportunities, right? And what we generally found was that since we launched trading, we've seen more than 50% additional addresses now have Gods Unchained cards, right? So we've actually seen after our sale more people get involved even in the trading and ownership of Gods Unchained than previously did, right? At the same time, I think there's still a lot of work to do here, right? In terms of basically the scaling of trading, right? So Gods Unchained, as I said before, 7 million assets, which is substantially more than most other NFT-based projects, right? This is something that we're happy about because we see the future of one of the reasons that we had to create so many cards was that we want our Genesis season to last forever, right? And we see that as lasting forever as being a season when Gods Unchained has 1 million+ players, right? So we have a need to create that many cards so that we have sort of like long-term and sustainable utility in the game. Right? But at the same time, that also means that particularly in a time of quite high gas prices and challenging blockchain UX, that trading lots of those cards is simply unprofitable, right? So at the moment, I'll go back to this later. I'd say the Gods Unchained economy is in a holding pattern, right? We're seeing like most users sort of retain their assets. Most users be very excited about what's coming up, right? But at the same time, we're not seeing massive liquidity yet, right? So that's something that we're working quite hard on this year, is putting the infrastructure in place to actually see large scale trading between large numbers of users with large numbers of assets, right? And that's something we think we're in a good position to develop.
As game companies, one of the primary things that we have to do is to create content in order to monetize. You have to constantly be creating new content. And so, Kris, with your background in gaming, esports, I guess this bridge between traditional games and their ability, think of like Epic Games and Fortnite, right? They're masters of creating content and finding ways to monetize, be it special brands, creating social events. I guess, like, where do you see of these different blockchain projects, the content creation bottleneck happening, and do you have any solutions?
So, you mentioned Epic Games, and if I can answer the question by like taking a step back for a second, right? We have the gaming industry, which is worth $160 billion in revenue now globally, and mobile gaming is actually half that now. So mobile gaming on its own is as big as the movie and music industry combined. Like, that's incredible, right? And it's become increasingly predatory how mobile games in particular monetize their players, right? It's free to play, right? Free to play has been kind of the dominant paradigm for the past 10 years. You give away the core experience for free, and then you monetize through, at first microtransactions, right? Like, get players hooked with like a $2 package that they, the starter package that you have to buy. And then before you know it, if you're trying to keep up and you're trying to, enjoy the game as much as possible, you're buying the $30 package. And then if you have the disposable income to do it, and they're kind of catering to these whales, you're buying the $99 package, right? And all of a sudden, it's obviously not free to play. It's really kind of psychologically like manipulating you into spending a large amount of money, and you don't even own these assets, right? You don't own the assets. You're essentially like licensing them in most cases in the terms of service. And they're incredibly profitable, right? So whether it's Fortnite on mobile or Fortnite in general, they're making an enormous amount of money, right? $400 million, I believe, just in last month, right? In the latest report. And this concept of play to earn is the new kind of paradigm shift that companies like Immutable and VZ Games with HashRush are trying to bring to the forefront, right? And to me, I mean, I'm sure play to earn means something a little bit different to everyone, but it's giving players a way to have earning opportunities, right? Not just these kind of spending opportunities at opportune moments and taking advantage of players' behavior, but having to earn items, having enhanced ownership of those items, so you control them in a wallet, and they're yours to trade and monetize. And then the concept of participatory game economies, right? So game developers are actually embracing this concept of like, oh, we'll actually allow you to use our API. We'll allow you to build, ancillary experiences on top, right? A deck tracker for Gods Unchained, or a marketplace. So yeah, play to earn is kind of this new experimental business model that hopefully can grow and can show that, games don't have to be so predatory. You can actually take a longer run approach and try to monetize and create basically a more enhanced economy that is built for the long run, not just to kind of have whales spend the most money.
So some pushback that we get from traditional game companies is they're not interested in sharing that revenue with users, right? So as blockchain game developers, are we taking a hit by not doing that? Or do you think that actually reverses and people, we see other investments from the player because of that?
Yeah, it's kind of taking a hit on the primary sales in a sense, and kind of looking at the long tail of secondary trading and secondary market, right? So developers can still monetize through secondary transactions, right? So they sell the item once, and then I trade it to you, Marguerite. 5 months later, you trade it to Kris. He trades it to Alex, and the developer can take a small cut on every secondary trade in perpetuity, forever, right? So what you're doing is you're selling fewer items up front, but you're making them more scarce, and then you're embracing open trading. And we've seen that with Counter-Strike, and that blew up. So there needs to be controls in place. Obviously, there's some limit to what should be allowed with huge games, but it's more about thinking about the long run versus just kind of, you know, being a central bank and having infinite supply of items and monetizing in that way. So it's two different approaches, and it's untested, right? We're all kind of trying to test it, but I do believe there's a way to monetize the same amount or even more by taking a longer term approach.
With HashRush, I guess, with content creation, sometimes we get pushback when we want to mint new assets, right? Because now all of a sudden we're devaluing everybody's holdings and their assets that they have. So unlike this scenario in which Epic Games can just keep pushing out new content, they don't have to worry about devaluing everybody's assets in the same way that a blockchain game company, it feels like you're issuing more currency, essentially. Has HashRush thought, like, what systems do you have in place to kind of create a healthy ecosystem?
So I think regarding the premium currency itself, it's all about being open, you know, and because it's on blockchain, to be honest, it's an open ledger. So every player or everybody who buys Rush or I don't know, yeah, gets it in the game, see how many Rush coins are out there. For now, what we're doing is we're trying to aim for gamers first, and the biggest problem there is to keep Rush coins stable enough to attract new gamers in, and basically for them to understand that this is a premium currency. You know, if the price jumps up and down, that's something that cannot be attractive for a standard player, because that's our main player base. So what we're doing for now is we're adding the Rush price to a stable coin, for example, like DAI. So one Rush is equal to one DAI, and we know how much are out there, and we're allowing players to sell their Rush coin off through our own client in patches. So they can't really, we're creating our own liquidity pool system that then allows them to just, for example, add 250 Rush each week and sell them off to new players that join the game, or players that want to buy into more Rush. So that's how we, I think, handled the ups and downs of cryptocurrency. Regarding the NFT itself, you know, with NFT it's a little bit different. You know, for NFT, when you mint them, I think you have to be open about how many of these there are going to be out there, and you always know that NFTs, because it's non-fungible, it's going to be one of a kind. So that's a different. I think at that point, player just puts the pricing on that, and there's things that can change the price while the game runs. As Kris, I think, mentioned at the beginning, for example, you know, a popular streamer does something crazy unique in HashRush for example, finishes a planet in record time. You know, maybe that NFT that he used on that planet was going to be more worth at that time. So that prices can vary. That's normal, but to handle keeping the price stable for the new player to come in and explore the game by purchasing the premium currency, we're setting the price for now. And once we get enough liquidity and enough trading in the pool and volume, I think that's when we can turn to a free market.
So the solution is for more players to get more liquidity. Is there, I guess, any other underlying incentives in which would attract the new players to come?
You mean like buy Rush coin or to play the game itself?
Yeah, like if you're playing the game and doing certain actions, you're going to have rewards for doing that you can roll back into your inventory.
So for new players to come in and purchase Rush, mostly Rush is used as a premium currency. So you need Rush to participate in the P2P trading. And we use basically the P2P trading means that you're selling cards to other players, and then these cards are used in the game, for example, to boost your experience on the planet. For example, boost your attack, combat units, or so on. Or those can be skins, stuff like that as well. So for the player, I think for the new player, what he sees it is basically a storefront. So it's like any other free-to-play game. You see a store, but really these prices are set by the market and by other players, except the rush price that is set by us for now for stability reasons.
Okay, all right, thank you. Alex, I guess like in thinking about, you have this new deck coming out, this content, the expansion. What's the reception been like for releasing the new assets? Are players excited more content is coming, or is anyone grumpy that their assets might be devalued?
Yeah, awesome. I think this is one of the key questions in sort of like maintaining long-term community health in the blockchain game space at the moment. Right? I think that like there needs to be a really good balance struck between the way in which games companies mint assets, whether that's to monetize or to stimulate the economy or to like promote utility, and the value that we might be depriving players of, right? If they've made decisions to buy assets and then those assets are becoming less valuable, then that's absolutely something that they'll react to, right? What we found in Gonsalves has really worked for us, right? So I'll say, overall, the answer to the question is people are very excited, right? People are very keen to see this. It's going to be 150 new cards, new additions to the sort of metagame, new additions to like, there's new game mechanics on the way. I think players have been able to test it out a little bit so far, and we've had overwhelmingly positive reception, right? But that's part of the reason we've been able to do that is because what we try for is not, like, we're not going to sort of never print any assets ever again, right? We think that's the wrong approach. And it also optimizes for short-term value for players as well, right? So like, even if we did, let's say that we added 1 million players to a game with 7 million assets, and so everyone could have 7 cards, that wouldn't be a particularly sort of successful scaling approach, right? And so we think actually the best way to create value for players is by building the best game possible, right? So building the type of game that's going to attract a really long-term success and to create that secondary market trading in the long tail that Kris mentioned earlier, right? One of the things that's necessary to do that is new content, right? And so what we've been able to do with the power of the blockchain is make guarantees to players about the nature of that content, right? So we sort of are programmatically prohibited from minting cards from previous seasons after those seasons go off sale, right? And so in this new expansion that we're going to be launching, we're sort of blockchain prevented from being able to mint any cards that were available during the Genesis season, right? And so even though we're minting new content for the game, and so there's more assets for people to interact with, users have guarantees about the scarcity of their cards, how many of those cards will ever exist, the trading history of those cards, etc. Right? And so we've been able to find a really good balance between, okay, we need to make a successful game, and that means new content, that means new players, that means building a bigger pool, right? And at the same time, we want you to be able to make like rational decisions, right, based on your knowledge of the market, right? And we've been able to make and keep those commitments to players so far. I think obviously, this is an ongoing dialogue with us and our players regarding sort of like the balancing of exactly the question you just mentioned. Right? I think this is something that we're just really looking to solve by talking to our players, working out what they want, and massively aligning our incentives with theirs. Right? We want people, and we're lucky to have a community that wants Gods Unchained to be a long-term success, right? And wants it to be the biggest blockchain game in the world, not like for the foreseeable future, right? So I think we're very excited about, and our community are very excited about that vision, not just the short-term optimization.
I just want to touch, this is a tiny bit off topic, but I want to touch on the crazy marketing campaign that went viral last year that you guys
absolutely.
did. Like I remember being, I think I was at DevCon. Yeah, I was at DevCon, and oh my God, you killed Twitter, basically. So yeah, what did you do? Why did you do it? And whose idea was it?
Okay. So basically what happened, if you don't know, was in about October last year, sort of a player called Blitzchung was banned after saying free Hong Kong on a Hearthstone stream. So Hearthstone is a TCG like Gods Unchained, right? It's like one of the more analogous games in the centralized space, right? He said free Hong Kong on a stream, and Blizzard banned him, took away his cards, and also stripped him of his tournament winnings, right, which he already won, right? And we basically felt that this was a great chance for us to tell people about why centralized control over assets actually matters, right? Which is, I think lots of people will often ask us the question of, oh, I generally trust game developers, or like they're not going to actively try and take my stuff away, right? I think usually we message to them about Steam placing trade bans on accounts, or like it being really hard to build a sustainable business on Steam, right? But here we had a great example in a very competitive game, to God's Unchained, of when centralized games companies have full control over user assets, they are able to completely deprive you of them, right, for any reason whatsoever at their complete discretion, right? And because their terms of service say, you don't own this stuff, you've got a licensed user, which is conditional on just about everything you can think of in the world. And as Kris was talking about before, like you really don't own this stuff, right? And so what we did was we sort of went on Twitter and started to say, we offered to pay Blitzchung his tournament winnings. We offered him a sort of a tournament, which we hope will be happening soon, which we invited him to, etc. Right? And that got really, really big on Twitter. Right? In terms of whose idea it was, I think it was certainly a collaborative effort here at Immutable, but I think we knew immediately after we saw it that this was a chance for us to really demonstrate to people who, mainstream gamers who don't always understand blockchain gaming or why it would matter, exactly why we were different to a company like Blizzard and a game like Hearthstone. And I think it was a great opportunity for us to really show off some of decentralized gaming's real competitive advantage.
Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome. I loved that campaign.
One thing I want to add to that is they rescinded his tournament winnings, right? Which is something you can't do if you're paid via smart contract, right? You can't take that back. Like they literally took his prize money away after he already won it. So, we're building a smart contract powered tournament platform, and that's a clear real world use case of, automatic payments upon completion. Can't take that back. Doesn't matter what that person's political views are. He won fair and square.
So Kris, with your esports tournament, those rules are predefined, right? What point does that happen, when people are onboarding, or is that?
Yeah, so we like to call it an automated tournament platform. When you sign up, so it's battledow.com is the version 1 right now. People can go check it out. When you sign up, you have username, email, password, and then the second step is to link or have a wallet created for you. So we know that some people have MetaMask wallets. That's great. Link their MetaMask. But some people don't know what MetaMask is, and it's kind of a daunting thing for a 19-year-old League of Legends player, maybe not willing to understand what a mnemonic phrase is or a private key and storing it, and they've heard bad things about losing all their money. So we give them an option right now through a company called Ethereum to just have a wallet generated for them, which is then linked to their profile. So when you sign up, you can either connect your MetaMask, or you get a wallet linked to your profile, so you don't have to worry about what it is or storing the key. Then when you play in the matches for games that we are working with right now with Skyweaver, we can use their API to pull in the match results automatically. So there's no match disputes. There's no manual reporting to an admin that has to go back and forth with you on Discord. And then when the tournament is over, the entry fees, which were held in escrow by our smart contract, will automatically send out the winnings to the wallets that I mentioned previously that are connected to your user profile, right? So it's essentially the whole tournament experience can be automated from you have a wallet created for you, match results are reported automatically, and then smart contract pays out the correct winners in this trustless manner, which is a huge improvement over like traditional online leagues and tournament platforms where sometimes it takes days or weeks to get paid out. There's a lot of horror stories where players never get paid out. And in some cases, like leagues that were started misused funds, and this whole idea of transparency can add a lot of improvements and efficiencies with understanding how was the money used, right? It came from the sponsor, then you paid the team paid the players, and even Epic Games. There's articles about Epic Games not paying players because they have to pay thousands of players, and it's a huge manual process to find 10,000 people, and they have to submit their their tax info and all this stuff. So There are KYC questions for sure, but to some extent, removing all of the manual processes is our goal, and adding efficiencies to the competitive infrastructure.
I'm just curious, but like, do you plan to roll out some features where there'll be like a matchmaking? So if I'm a player and I've done pretty well historically across your different games on Battledow, that players could find my record of play essentially and recruit me?
So what we're going to be doing soon is rolling out a leaderboards system, which will essentially, if your name's up there at the top, coin artist, you're number one, they'll click into your profile, and we're trying to jumpstart this idea of your gamer ID, right? This persistent gaming alias that really what it'll be is your competition wallet, right? It doesn't need to be your private address where you're doing private transaction. It's like your wallet where all your NFTs are stored from HashRush and Unchained, and where all of your winnings are coming from tournament platforms or marketplace trades. And you can connect your social profiles to it, and you can connect 3box to it, whatever wallet system and ID system that we choose to work with. And then this will be this concept of your player ID, your player identity. So people will be able to discover you. You can show that I attended this tournament on this date. I got first place. Here's my first place NFT badge. That's tracked on the leaderboards. Here's my stats. Here's my wins across all these different games. So that's something we're looking to do pretty soon.
So with that 3box profile, that's something that then, like, for example, in Neon District, I could pull from, and we could have that badge within the game of Neon District itself. We could know how they've performed across the different Battledow tournaments.
Yeah, and the way we have it implemented right now in kind of a MVP state is you have your 3box address on your profile page, and then if you go to that, you kind of have it's like a feed, right? You can see all the transactions that wallet has done, right? So it can be entering tournaments, getting tournament winnings, being an active participant on the HashRush marketplace, right? So then there's this idea of reputation, right? Like maybe I'm a market maker on an auction house, and you can build up this reputation, like trusted, I'm a trusted guild leader, I'm a trusted trader, I've cornered the market on HashRush items. So it's this idea of an ID, and then from there you can build reputation on top of it.
I love it. I'm going to come back to you. I have more questions. But Kris, with HashRush, have you guys done any sort of tournaments within HashRush, like incentives or ways for like a weekend event?
Yeah, we so right now that we launched beta, we have been trying to get people to engage more in the game and try to test out our balancing and game design, because competitions is going to be a huge part of the game as well. It's around the competitions is a way for gamers to turn in game rewards that they can craft into NFTs and sell on the marketplace. So it's going to be a core feature. And right now we're having a competition, and it's set around Galaxy Points. Galaxy Point is something like an experience point you get for clearing out planets. That is something that player does on a daily basis. So faster you finish off the planet, more Galaxy Points you get, and you jump to the next planet and do it all over again. Right now, because we're still in soft beta, we are not distributing any rewards yet. We're testing out the game and gathering feedback from the community and just trying to understand what we can improve. Hopefully, once we launch our Rushcoin, once we put Rushcoin into the game, we're gonna start distributing Rushcoin and loot through these reward systems as well.
Could you explain a little bit more about that mechanic of when you're saying clearing out a planet for the gamer experience? What's happening?
So basically every player starts with his own individual planet, and the goal is to build up your colony strategically well as possible, because while you're building up your colony, the environment of the planet gets more hostile, and it starts attacking you and starts slowing you down. And then you need to push down the environment that's attacking you, by building up defenses. And while you're doing that, you need to push back and start clearing out outposts of enemies. And then you reach a state where you have the final outpost and you meet the final boss. And after finishing the final boss, that is Crystal Fiend, you can successfully move the next planet that has harder monsters, different loot on it, different biomes, so a different experience in general. And I think that's where the competition really comes in, that for a player, and I think that's where the P2P trading as well comes in. You know, for a player to successfully draw in enough resources to participate into P2P trading and these P2P challenges, you know, you need to have this momentum of jumping from one planet to the next one. Yeah.
Alex, have you held any tournaments?
So actually, we've had community players run tournaments, but we haven't held any officially yet. I can't leak anything too soon, but one thing I will say is like our players are crying out for sort of native support for direct challenge and 1v1 games. I'm sure news of this will be interesting to Kris as well. And I can say that that's very much on the way. I can't be any more specific than that.
Is that 500K tournament, is that still coming?
Absolutely. So we have a sort of a roadmap for competition within Gods Unchained. Like we've always envisaged that Gods Unchained would be a competitive game, right? So there are stages that we need to go through to get there, right? So that's both things I just talked about, sort of direct challenge in 1v1, it's game native support for tournaments, it's implementing a combat log, it's implementing a replay system. One of the things that we did with Genesis was we set aside 10% of pack sales for a world tournament, right? And obviously, you know, COVID stuff aside, and maybe that might have to look a bit different to how we originally envisaged it. But our goal is very much is to get there and to use that as a massive sort of expansionary opportunity for Gods Unchained. Right? We think there's a big market for competitive games, and we want Gods Unchained to be you know, the first real blockchain esport.
Thank you. I want to pivot just a little bit to, we've been talking about NFTs as game assets. But something we've seen as a big trend in the space is land sales, right? And it's hard to not pay attention to land sales as developers, because it's obviously a need when you have, or people are so excited about them. You want to look at ways in which, oh, can we implement land sales in a way that makes sense for our game? So I guess Kris Gonsalves, I'll go back to you. What's your favorite land sale you've seen so far from a game company that you think is most promising?
So the only land I've bought is from Axie Infinity, and I was an early Axie Infinity player. I didn't get a chance to snag any sandbox lands, but that's one game that I'm really looking forward to as well. And there's probably a lot out there, right? There's Decentralized as well. But Axie Infinity is the one that I own some land, some nice plots, some nice estates. And yeah, I mean, you know, for land to really be super valuable, you really need millions of players, right? Or at least, you know, hundreds of thousands. We're not even there yet. But so, you know, I think we're in an early stage right now where there's 10,000 hardcore blockchain gamers out there. And there's probably 10,000 pieces of land, right? So that everyone could get a piece of land right now. But once there's like a huge breakout hit, right? And there's millions of players, that's when land value is going to become a lot more, you know, important and significant, when everyone can't have one, right? And then the plots that have, you know, near the center of the city or wherever it is, you know, the maker building and crypto voxels that I've seen, you know, that's when that becomes super, super valuable and not just, you know, speculative for the future. So I'm really looking forward to the first game that has, you know, an enormous amount of players that's mainstream. And then I'll probably become a lot more interested in buying more land.
Yeah, thank you. Kris, have you thought about land sales?
Yeah, we had an idea of like selling individual planets and having some kind of, you know, naming your own planet, but we haven't went further with that. To be honest, right now we want to build the economy and settle the, you know, the core game. We need that to work, and then as Kris said, once we get the players in, we get the volume and liquidity, and we can think about selling more assets to our community as well. But I think the idea is cool, and it's definitely could be something that we could explore. And I think we can, getting land is one thing, but maybe monetizing the land as well is something that blockchain could allow us to do as well. And I think that is another way, another path for the play turn. It could be interesting in the future.
Yeah, I love the idea of owning a planet.
Yeah.
Alex, when it's a card game, like, is there a real creative stretch there in which you can have land in a card game, or is this something you're not even thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, look, we're always thinking about anything we can do to create sort of maximum value and be the biggest game possible. I think, obviously, game designs like this have to fit in for the game, right? So I think this is very much something that, like, we consider all options. At the moment, it's not really something that we have a super strong plan for, at least in Gods Unchained, right? And that's just because we think it's, we want to work out, we think what is going to make Gods Unchained great is the sort of the trading of cards, right? At the same time, at Immutable, obviously I mentioned previously that we're looking to sort of to build our Immutable platform, right, which will be sort of like basically an easier way to build blockchain games, right? And one of the things that we might do there is working on a series of new titles, right? And one of those absolutely might involve similar mechanics, right?
Are you talking about any of these titles yet?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and look, this is very much in sort of in an exploration phase for us. We're very much like our primary attention is both on Gods Unchained and the platform almost exclusively, right? We have big challenges to solve before we think that any blockchain game is going to be a mainstream hit, right? And so even though we're working on games at the same time, we're focusing on our infrastructure and focusing on making Gods Unchained as big as possible.
You had mentioned earlier that you are working on some scaling solutions. And as we're kind of running out of time here, I really want to make sure that we can cover what it is that you're doing, I guess, at Immutable, right? Like with the platform.
Yep.
What are the pain points you recognized, and what have you done to address those?
Yeah, so I think this is going back to something that I talked about earlier, right? Which is the big trade-off of non-fungibility, right? Which is non-fungibility is fantastic in terms of it gives you options as a player, right? It means that each of your assets can actually be unique, that we can track actual ownership history and things like that. The big trade-off is that it's expensive, right? So it's expensive to mint NFTs, right? And it's expensive to trade NFTs, right? So with gas prices the way they are at the moment, it can often cost $2+ to trade a Gods Unchained card. Like just one card for ETH is a significantly expensive transaction, right? And because we want cards to be able to be we have cards that are worth 5 cents. We have cards that are worth $60,000, right? We have like a really big range of value, and excluding the bottom end of that range really hurts us in terms of utility, right? We want to provide a nice on-ramp for the game where a new player can join, they can go to the marketplace, they can buy a couple of cards they need. It's going to cost them $5. They can explore the game that way, right? Whereas if you come as a mainstream gamer at the moment and you're like, oh, I'd like to buy a deck, the cost of the cards is $20 and the cost of the fees is $100. That's a pretty challenging experience, right? So what we're working on to help us resolve that is what we call Immutable X, right? So we put out some press announcements if people want to Google this and things around it, which is basically sort of a layer 2 solution that we're working on with the team at Starkware, which is basically a way of doing sort of zero knowledge proof-based roll-ups for NFTs, right? So we can do NFT minting, NFT transfers, in a way that basically inherits most of the security properties directly from the layer 1 Ethereum chain, right? While at the same time letting us do everything we want with actually creating NFTs, assigning properties to NFTs and things like that, right? One of the things, the reason this is super important for us is like one of the other options we considered was sort of like fungibilizing everything and like moving everything down to sort of like just a fungible class of tokens, right? We didn't want to do that for various reasons, partly because of the extensibility that I talked about earlier, right? But the amazing thing is that one of the challenges for all NFT-based projects at the moment, right, or at least certainly for us here at Gods Unchained, is non-fungible tokens can often hurt the liquidity of markets, right? And that's because each token is actually individual, right? So if you're going to have, for instance, I want to put in a buy order for any gold card in Gods Unchained or any card of this type, that's quite complicated to do, right? There are some sort of hacks you can do to make it work, but not really, right? One of the things that we're very excited with Immutable X will be metadata-based orders, which is basically to say that you can do buy or sell orders where you're going to say, right, I'll buy any NFT as long as it has these properties, right? And we can actually, hoping to eventually be able to enforce that trustlessly, right? So like you won't even have to trust Immutable that will match up the orders correctly, but you'll be able to trust in the sort of cryptography, right? And that will basically mean that we eventually hope that NFTs can be like a completely opt-in sort of premise, right? Which is if you just want your NFT to be traded as any Gods Unchained card, that's easy, right? If you want your NFT to be traded as any Gods Unchained card of a particular type, that's easy, right? If you want your card to only ever be traded as a one-of-a-kind card because it was signed by Ninja or it was signed by PewDiePie or something particularly unique to that card, you can totally do that, right? And we think that that's actually not something that game developers should be doing, right? So making that choice is something that is going to be best made by the economic interests and the gameplay interests of the player involved, right? So that rather than enforcing that on users, we want to give them all the NFTs that we can, right? And then use that metadata system to be able to still enable sort of trustless trading, right? And that's a system that we want to scale across multiple games. And it's a system that we, in particular, are looking at scaling Gods Unchained with very soon, right? We want to be able to give Gods Unchained the power of both this like very fast trading, so we can do probably 10,000 transactions a second, right? It's going to be gas free, so you're not going to have to pay gas fees, right? And you're also going to get nice UX benefits, so instant confirmation when things go through and everything like that, right? And so that's something that we're going to be shipping this year. So we're very excited about what's coming on that front.
That sounds, actually, I just had someone say to me today that, man, it'd be great if there was a Uniswap, but for NFTs. And this sounds like a very slick version of that, especially with no gas fees. So that's really neat. When do you expect that? You said just later this year?
I'd say later this year at the moment. I think we're very excited to get it as quickly as possible for various reasons. I think particularly given the situation of mainnet Ethereum at the moment, this is more important than it arguably ever was. But unfortunately, I'm not going to hurt our marketing or our engineering team by trying to throw dates around.
Yeah, I hear you.
Criticize afterwards.
I think are we supposed to be ending, guys, here, or are we supposed to go for another 30 minutes?
Hey, you're all welcome to keep talking. No. The conversation's great. And if you're all available, we're happy to have you.
Okay. Well, I'll just give Kris, I'll open up the floor to all of you guys if there's something you want to talk about with your projects. But Kris, in talking about scaling, Kris Gonsalves, in talking about scaling with different projects, I know you're really close with the Skyweaver team. Are you able to speak to at all like what their solution was so far with how they're able to do the card game using the state channels, and is that currently what they're doing today?
So right now it's on testnet, and I can't speak I don't want to speak for them and future plans, but optimistic rollups, they've found a way to build their own tech as well to scale. And I think a lot of game developers, if you're well capitalized, you probably realize that it's best to build your own scaling solution, right? I mean, there's a lot out there, right? Starkware and Matic, and we used to have like Loom was one of the first ones. But I think as more game developers raise money and have the dev resource to do it, it makes sense to build your own solution, right? Whether it's sidechain, some combination of the solutions out there. It makes more sense to do it yourself, and they've built their own. So that's all I can speak to that.
We're seeing this with Axie Infinity as well. They're building their own solution too. Yeah. And so these two games, sorry, what was it? What's it called?
It's called Ronin, I believe.
Ronin. With these are the two tournaments, your blockchain game tournaments that you're hosting on Battledow currently. Have you seen any of your mainstream esport game tournaments like cross over into any of the blockchain game tournaments yet?
So we're going to have our first DAI tournament for like a mainstream esports game very soon. Something that Alex said before that I think we're thinking a lot about too is we shouldn't force everyone to have DAI if they don't want to yet. Right, the key word there is yet. We shouldn't force people to do stuff that still right now has a lot of usability hurdles. Right, I think it should be optional. It should be encouraged. We should over time make the benefits more and more clear. Right, of transparency, fast payments, gas issues aside, cheap and trustless. But we're not going to force immediately all of our League of Legends players to create wallets if they want to be in our next tournament, right? Like there'll be a big drop off right there. So we're going to start with basically an optional, pretty nice prize pool that is a DAI prize pool. And we're not going to allow them to have PayPal. We're going to say, if you want to enter this, like this is the prize pool. It's going to be DAI. And we're going to test it out. And we're hoping that a lot of people really enjoy it. And it's like their first entry into, DeFi, creating a wallet, understanding, what Coinbase is, et cetera. And then, through some of the partnerships we have, we're going to make the onboarding super simple. We're going to have credit card integration using Wire. And that way you'll be able to buy your first ETH or your first DAI with credit card. That'll be sent into the smart contract. And then you'll win DAI or you'll win ETH, and hopefully you'll keep it, right? Like we want them to keep it, but they'll also have the ability to convert it through Wire as well into USD in their bank account if that's what they want, right? So we're going to give them both options, and we're going to over time encourage them to keep it in crypto and to to utilize DeFi applications, marketplaces. But yeah, we're not going to force them to do it, but we're going to have our first Counter-Strike tournament soon with DAI.
Counter-Strike. So the Dota tournament you're doing on Saturday is just a regular mainstream?
Correct. Yeah, and I can tell you right now, when the tournament's over, I'm going to be the one who's chasing down the 20-year-olds on Discord saying, what's your PayPal email? And I'm going to have to pay out 15 people using PayPal manually. And maybe I'll get 10 that night. And then over the course of the next 5 days, they'll hit me up on Discord. Oh, I didn't get paid. Here's my PayPal. Oh, there was a typo in my PayPal. So like there's so many manual processes involved that we want to get rid of, right? So we want to transition to all of our events with the registration, the payouts on Battledow, on the tournament platform. But yeah, it's gonna take a little time, and we're gonna have to massage it into them so they really understand the benefits.
Awesome, thank you. I guess the prize pool, who's providing these? Especially on the blockchain side.
Yeah, recently we got a grant from Maker, and so the most recent Axie tournament that was on Saturday was the Axie Invitational, and that was DAI that came from Maker. And we're definitely going to be reaching out to a ton more companies in the blockchain space. So if you're a game developer that has a competitive game, please reach out to me or to Hader, our CTO. We want to work with you. We want to onboard you and your community leaders and your streamers onto the platform to start organizing custom tournaments. And if you're a dApp or whatever, an exchange, and you want to sponsor some tournaments, please reach out to us as well, because we want to get more endemic sponsors to the blockchain world. Like we have a lot of sponsors for our regular tournaments, from the traditional gaming world, but we'd love to get more people from the blockchain dApp world to start sponsoring tournaments.
Are you going to be offering any advertisements across?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Our newsletter. We got like 10,000 gamers on our newsletter. We don't have ads on the site right now. Maybe we will soon. Obviously, social media. We run a ton of Facebook ads. So yeah, you'll get your name out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I guess that's a good recap for you for what's coming up ahead. Is there anything you want to add to it before I move to Kris?
No, that's all.
Okay.
Is this my final?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I've been speaking for a while.
Yeah, Kris, I guess for the immediate upcoming weeks, like maybe 2 to 3 weeks, what milestones or things are going on that are exciting for you that we should be paying attention to?
The first and the biggest one is the implementation of Rushcoin, and finally allowing players to trade with each other and on-ramp themselves with USD as well, and receive DAI for selling it off to other players. I think that's a big milestone that the community has been waiting for. And we have developed our own system called HashRush Wallet Service that's going to provide the infrastructure for that. And then, of course, I think finally getting the leaderboards in the game and getting some competitions on as well, and start start delivering some rewards for the players who jump from planet to the planet in the fastest times.
Ooh, races, nice. That's exciting. So if I wanted to play your game, what do I need to do? What would I need to do?
So yeah, right now we're in beta, in soft beta. You just go into hashrush.com, download the client. It's only PC right now. But yeah, you can download the client there. You have to register, log in, and basically that's it. You can enjoy the game. It's free to play. If you don't want to use blockchain or anything, you don't have to. So you can just enjoy the game right now with any upfront payment or anything like that. And then once we implement the Rush coin, you can start enjoying the store and start buying stuff as well, and hopefully get more competitive as well.
If I wanted to be more involved as a community person and I really enjoyed the game, what's the best?
Join over Discord. We're most active there. Always talking about HashRush and always exploring new ways to bring the play turn to players. And you can join over Telegram as well. But Discord and Telegram are the best places to catch up with the team and the community. And we're really excited to see you guys in the beta and become one of the testers and just bring this play turn experience to mainstream gaming.
Thank you. That sounds really cool. Alex, I guess I know you've got some major things going on right now. So if I'm a community member next 3 weeks, what's my future look like?
Yeah, so I think we've got I know there's a lot of really awesome stuff planned. Some of it I can talk about, some of it I can't talk about. But I think it's going to be an exciting month for Gods Unchained community members. I think probably the big thing that I definitely can talk about is expansion 1, which is going to be the first time that it's 150 new cards I talked about earlier. So it's going to be the first time that we're sort of accepting credit card payments for assets and things like that, right? Which is taking a bunch of setup work on our end, but which will hopefully make that purchasing journey just a little bit easier for our players, right? And that's going to come with, like I said, new cards, new lore, a whole bunch of really cool stuff. I think people should be very excited for the amount of depth that's about to be added to the game.
Okay, so how do I get started from here?
So everyone can just go to godsunchained.com, right, and download the launcher. Right, there's a bunch of tutorials. If you've ever played a TCG, it'll be pretty similar to those. If you haven't, there's plenty of learning materials that either us or community members have made. Our Discord is always the best hub for learning about Gods Unchained and for chatting with people and for asking us questions. I think we've built a really special community there. So very excited.
Thank you. Kris, I'll let you say a couple last words if you had a minute of anything you wanted to share. If not,
Me, Kris?
Sorry, Gonsalves, yep.
Okay. So yeah, we have some of the early pioneers of play to earn here. All of us have implemented it in some way, and I know reading the white paper of HashRush, that was maybe the first time I heard of it. And yeah, I guess the message I want to send is kind of recapping what I said earlier, the design strategies and the monetization of games today is just becoming increasingly predatory, and there's no earning opportunities, right? If you're not a pro player at the highest top 0.1% of skill, or if you're not a talented streamer that can build a brand around yourself, you have no way to earn supplemental income, or even just be a weekend warrior and earn $20. So this concept of play to earn is in its early days, but it's a really powerful concept, and we're still figuring out the right economics, and can we make money, can we lose money, or do we lose money? But I think there's a lot of experimenting that's going on, and us on the call are some of the early experimenters. But there's a lot of huge game companies as well, right? I know Tim Sweeney was just talking about blockchain last week, right? So he's obviously very aware of it. So to the extent that we can see you guys innovate from kind of the bottom up, and then catch the eyes, make the heads turn of the Tim Sweeneys and the Blizzards and the Riots of the world, and hopefully soon we'll see limited edition Fortnite skins that are NFTs, and we'll see more earning opportunities for players, not just spending opportunities catered to whales. So that's just kind of my send-off message, that I hope more developers experiment with play to earn.
That is a great conclusion. I I was going to say some words, but that's it. That's perfect. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Like all of you, the bear market for the past 3 years, I think all of us went through it. It was pretty brutal, and well, for at least on my side, it was pretty brutal. And I am really excited about seeing this uptick in support, seeing the interest. Like, it makes it rewarding to have been an application developer this whole time now and to be providing utility for this space. So anyways, I'm excited to be here with you guys, and thank you so much for coming on today. And I will see you soon. And thank you, Consensus.
Thanks, yeah.
See you all.